We move on to our topic of the week, and it's The Disaster Artist yet again, returning to what we talked about a bit at the start, but we're going to get a little bit more into some spoilers and other discussions here. So this movie, the latest film directed by James Franco, also written, or I think co-written and co-starring James Franco.
Yes.
He plays the Tommy Wiseau character, Making the Room. It's the story of the production from the perspective of Greg Sestero, I think his name is.
Yes.
Who played by Dave Franco. It's kind of interesting that James and Dave, the co-stars of this movie, brothers in real life, don't play brothers in the film, but ultimately I don't think that mattered that much. It was able to be, like I said, a very funny film.
They are brothers. They love each other.
They do love each other. But yeah, this is another film in a long series of films that are about movies, but it's done from a different angle because there aren't as many films, I think, about bad movies. I mean, you look at like Ed Wood is probably the best example.
Ed Wood's a really good movie.
Of a movie that sort of celebrates the culture of bad movies or bad filmmakers, but this does it in a very different way, and I think gives you much more a slice of like the odd set atmosphere and all the ways in which making a movie is much more complicated than it seems at first. You can't just walk in and be the director. Art, what was your big takeaway from The Disaster Artist?
I loved how there is how do I put this? I hate The New Yorker. And I know that you're a fan of The New Yorker, I believe. I am not a fan of The New Yorker because there is an article that pretty much takes everything that I want to say right now from the question you told me and flips it on itself and talks about how it's only based on the mythos of Tommy Wiseau, that it's only focused on making fun of him or something, that it's all done from his perspective, yet you yourself just told me that it's done from the perspective of Greg, and we are introduced by Greg, and every scene is Greg. Other than
it's
the part
definitely
where,
from Greg's point of view.
Yeah,
I have no idea what they're talking
literally,
about.
I think like the only scene... Did you know there's an after credits?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Quick story. I saw it in the Alamo Draft House, left... Didn't have my phone, went back. I couldn't find it. I was freaking out. I'm like, great, I just got robbed in the Animal Draft House, and I bet they took it because they don't like cell phones. I find it in the seat as I'm coming out. I hear, oh, hi. And I'm like, so I thought it was like, it was an after credit scene. Tommy Wiseau meets Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah.
So stay for the after credit scene. It's very funny. It's very meta. It's a little corny, but it's worth staying for after the credits.
Yeah. There's a lot of like self nods that are really fun. I mean, they do a whole sequence during the credits. Not at the end, during the credits, where they show the recreated scenes side by side with the movie, which for me was one of my favorite parts, even though it kind of like breaks the spell a little. I think it's fun to see how they really went into detail to recreate the, down to the timing of all these lines and the sets, and it's pretty, it just as a piece of homage to another piece of art. I thought it was really, it's a love letter. Definitely, it's a great way of putting it.
Especially at the ending, like you said, they try to get the timing, but even the ones where they didn't reshoot it to get it perfectly, and it's just like, oh, these are like a bunch of friends who are trying to pay an homage to what they like, and I know even though it breaks it, to me the whole thing was again a love letter because they really, really, really like this movie. That's why you have that introduction. J.J. Abrams was the best one, first of all. The cameo that just pops up after that was hilarious. But yeah, exactly. This is why I go back to that thing from the New Yorker. There's a specific author in the New Yorker. This isn't to like bash the New Yorker or anything.
Richard Brody?
Yes!
Yeah, so this is an unrelated piece to our topic of the week, but there was an article that came out earlier. There's an article that came out earlier this week that used data to analyze who are the most contrarian film critics, and he was like top 4.
Bruh, no, he even did one on Call Me By Your Name. Said it wasn't... Whatever. He focused on this one saying that that The Room was legitimately a better movie than The Disaster Artist. Now, I agree with him, but he means it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I agree, but he actually means it.
Yeah.
And he spends this whole article trying to write it. And I'm like, Brody, you keep doing you, right?
I enjoy Richard.
You gotta stop.
I enjoy reading Richard Brody because I think sometimes it's interesting. It's an interesting like thought exercise. Sorry.
Is he trolling? I went on his Twitter.
I think it's more like an intellectual troll than an online troll, but like.
I'm trying to remember what he put on his Twitter because it was the second dumbest thing I heard in 2017. He put something on his Twitter saying like he didn't like the movie because I don't know. Give your thoughts real quick. I'm gonna search this up because this is worthy of figuring it out. But
yeah, I mean, I think the thing is there's people who are talking about the disaster artist in comparison to The Room. Because the disaster artist, if you look at it as from the traditional, like what makes a movie good quality-wise, it's got more of those things. It's better produced, the acting is better, the structure makes more sense, there's things that pay off. But I think what I'm hoping Richard Brody's point is, and maybe it is just a troll, is that like there's a uniqueness and an energy to the original Room, which is so hard to recreate. And the reason there is that passion around it, like there's not going to be that same passion for the disaster artist as there was for the original Room. And I think that's more his point. And I think it's interesting, but I don't think that necessarily negates the disaster artist in any way. I think the disaster artist functions perfectly well, even if you're not familiar with The Room. Just as an ode to a person who has this crazy vision and the way that people sort of fall in line and have trouble dealing with it. I mean, for me, what I think was most interesting about watching The Disaster Artist is it made me understand a lot better how people get involved in movies like these and in bad performances. And you see all the time, there's these things that we make fun of in movies, bad line readings or really weird script choices and really weird camera directions. And those are, it's the result of a creative struggle where somebody just gives up and it's like, all right, we'll do it your way at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect example of what happens when you refuse the fact that film is a collaborative process.
Right.
So that's what caused it to be what it is. And they even give a lot of credit to Sandy. I can't remember his full name. The guy who Seth Rogen plays.
Yeah.
He's supposed to be the dude who pretty much was able to make it coherent.
He gives himself a lot of credit for having essentially directed The Room,
according
the
to him,
script supervisor.
But like you said, it shows you why Tommy Wiseau would even do it in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, I don't know how many liberties it took, but it shows you why Greg Sestero would do the movie.
Yeah.
Because he was doing it for a friend. Even the actors that are good in the movie, right? It was either people who wanted to get their first shot, or the certain part when they're talking to the grandma character, and she pretty much says, "Yes, oh, fantastic!" Like when they were doing the side by side, I was like, when she says we're actors, that's what we do. The worst day on a film set. I loved it even more the second time. Like, it just stuck with me. Second time I saw it.
The worst day on a film set is
better than the best day on any other job, and I'm like, oh, like you fainted, but it's like you kind of have a point. You know what I mean? It's just like it really is one of the coolest jobs. And obviously, we're doing a podcast talking about movies, so obviously we adore it. But yeah, just the whole idea of making the movie in and of itself, but showing you how even when you come up with something that ends up being terrible, learning to embrace the movie, I thought was like the ending of the movie. Every time we get to the end of the movie, and you think he's a jerk, like he's a misogynist, he's a sexist. He's mean. He's a vampire. All these other messed up things that this dude is, right? He's probably like selling drug money, whatever it is. I don't know how he has that much money. But then he's crying at the end when everyone's laughing at his movie. And for like a split second, you're like, bro, what the heck?
You feel for him.
Right? You feel for him. And then he goes outside, he runs out. Yeah, and you're like, nah. Because it's like you're kind of with the DP when he wants to beat him up. But then at the end of it, you're like, yeah, but no. And then he goes up there, and he embraces the movie for what it is. And it's just like, how many of us have the balls to do that? How many of us won't even release something we're working on because we're too afraid that someone's going to make fun of it? Right. But he had the balls to do it, release it. Not just that, because David Fincher made Aliens 3 and he disowns it. And a lot of people write songs or make movies or TV shows and they disown it. He has embraced it to this day. And that is
why
he should have been Times Person of the Year.
I mean, look, it takes bravery to do that kind of shift, and I don't think Tommy Wiseau is this kind of like, a figure who should be admired for his craft or whatever. But
speak for yourself.
It is really fascinating the way
No,
that
it
he
is really
turned
fascinating. Like,
this
that is...
vision of dramatic narrative, this like all-American story, melodrama, and then just embraced the fact that people took it as a comedy and really just embraced that the movie got a reaction out of people. I don't think that means that The Disaster Artist is this like uplifting tale of, oh, you just have to try and you'll succeed. I think it's very much about this movie and about movie making, but I really enjoyed those aspects of it. And I think a lot of times, especially in comedies, you have characters who are there who don't really have motivation, and they're kind of just there to be laughed at. And because Tommy Wiseau, I think a lot of his actions oddly make sense in context, which I wasn't expecting them to. But because he's such a character, so many people around him get to play the more normal straight man, and it helps you kind of get a sense of who everybody is. I really appreciated that, and I enjoyed pretty much every moment of The Disaster Artist. Right. I guess I'm a little higher on it than you, though.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Let me give you these 3 questions right here, all right? Now, this is the second one that kind of leads in, but I'm going to start with the first. Do you think that the movie kind of makes fun of Tommy? Tommy's not doing anything about it?
So there are people who are accusing it of being kind of mean-spirited at Tommy. I don't know. I mean, he's a weird guy, and I think the movie kind of depicts things as they were or as they were perceived. I mean, it's not...
I recommend watching the interviews because he has done interviews where he says, he's like, no, I approved of it. I don't know if you saw Jimmy Kimmel one. His only complaint with the movie was actually that it was too dark at the beginning. Yeah. And that was because he wears his sunglasses. And then you go, well, you know what? Actually, maybe he's not making fun of him. Maybe he didn't make fun of him enough.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's the thing, is he seems to embrace all of it, and I think it's reached a point where it's kind of laughing with and not laughing at. I don't think it's like he is so weird. It's just kind of like, what is the motivation? And I think that's the thing that I enjoyed. I wanted to figure out what is going on in his head. That's what's fascinating to me.
He likes the ego of it, just a movie about him. As Lil Uzi Vert once said, it's because he's got that much money. If he didn't have that much money, then he would be thinking about it. But he's got too much money to think about it. Question number 2.
Yeah.
It got Golden Globe noms.
Yes, it did. It got a couple Golden Globe noms.
Forget those. What do you think it could get at the Oscars? Nominated, if not win?
So, I think it's all but assured to get a Best Adapted Screenplay nomination. Okay. I think they usually throw a comedy or two in there, giving comedy a bone. But it's very hard for comedy to break into those other categories. This is a pretty comedy-heavy year, between I, Tonya and 3 Billboards and Get Out and all sorts of films. I just think it's a crowded year, and I can't really imagine it getting Best Picture among all these movies now. There's so many other movies out there. I wouldn't be surprised if James Franco got actor. I could see him getting that like 5th slot, kind of surprising people.
Now, do you like him?
In the role.
I will say this. Watching the movie so closely, it's good. It is good. Mm-hmm. Watching the movie so closely, it's just an impression of Tommy.
Yeah, so that's another debate. I think it's worth talking about. Is this acting or is this just an impression to you?
It's just an impression, because I'm like, you're still kind of doing yourself, and the Francos have a smile. You know what I'm talking about. The Francos have a smile that is undeniably Franco-ish. Now, yes, Tommy has kind of a similar one, but there are points where Franco just comes out. You know what I mean? And it's just like, this is just Franco imitating him. His voice isn't as... Tommy kind of sounds like he's like breathing in at the same time, type of thing. You can't match Tommy's voice. I don't feel like he matched it to the degree that it was spot on, so it becomes more of an impression to me. And it always, for both viewings, it has taken me a bit to get into the character, because I'm just seeing James Franco do an impression. And maybe that's just because I know James Franco, but it's also not fair because it's such an unbelievable character.
Yeah.
That you're like, this ain't a real person. But it is. I don't know. Do you get what I mean though?
I do, and it's kind of hard when you have this situation because it does take a lot of talent to do that kind of impression, but you have to do more than impression for it to really be, acting. I do think that he was convincing in a bunch of scenes where you needed that impression to carry dramatic weight, and he did, and he was able to do that. I think it's one thing to get a laugh out of being awkward and having an accent, but it's another to really show emotional depth and give a performance that feels rooted in something real. And I did feel like it was rooted in something real. I felt like when he was doing things as Tommy, you understood what was the thought process there. So for me, it does go beyond impression. I don't know if it's like my favorite performance of the year or anything like that, but I think it'd be pretty great to see him get nominated or get some kind of respect for this award. And he's been getting some critics awards and stuff too, so it'll be interesting to see his path.
I want him to pop up just to see Tommy, the actual Tommy at the Oscars.
That's what we need. That's what we need. Is them co-presenting an award.
Yes, because remember at the end what they say, that he had released it in one theater, so he can be eligible for the Oscars. So that needs to happen.
That's the end of the journey.
Yeah, those are my two questions. Hey, hopefully not. I wanted to continue. Those are my two questions. My third one is, explain to me why Richard Brody said Twin Peaks, The Return is TV, but most of what's good in it is good in like a movie, because it's made by a movie director who directed all the episodes and does the kind of things he does in movies.
What? I have no idea what he means. There's a weird debate going. Let's backtrack to a yay or nay. Side note, yay or nay. Twin Peaks, the show. People are calling it one of the best movies of the year. Is a show a movie?
That is a big debate that y'all have to tune in next week for, because I got a lot to say about that one.